Board of Trustees, open Wednesday, August 15th. First item on our agenda is the minutes. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look at the minutes, and if they have any comments, improvements, suggestions, etc., pipe up. If none, I'd like to get a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay, we got a second. Any discussion? Discussion? If none, let's take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you for that. Some reports to the board. I think we still don't have everybody here, but the Student Government Association, they're not in yet, so we'll wait anxiously for them next time. Second report would be the Staff Senate. Kevin? Okay, they probably haven't been very active, so we'll move on to the next one. Third report would be the Faculty Senate. Jeff, do you have anything for us?
Sure, I do.
Okay.
I don't have a lot. Obviously, thanks for giving me the time, but we haven't really been meeting much this summer. We did have a Senate meeting this week on Monday, and we didn't get minutes out to you, so I'm sorry about that. That'll be on the next board meeting. At the beginning of last spring semester, I don't know if you remember, I talked about Faculty Senate working on a task force that was going to look at student success and some things that we could do to maybe improve student success, some research and things like that. We did come up with some ideas, and I thought I'd take this opportunity just to quickly share those ideas with you. We're going to present these ideas to faculty tomorrow at the faculty assembly meeting, and let faculty have a discussion about these ideas and then sort of rank them for us. And then our plan is to go back and come up with some concrete plans, actionable plans that we can present probably through College Council to the president and others to maybe get some of these things. And a lot of these things, I was just looking through this list again, the things that we heard this morning, the things we've been hearing, they're probably things that are going to get taken care of anyway, but I'll share them with you. The first on the list was a bridge program. There was some talk about, it's kind of interesting, a bridge program that Eastern Wyoming College does, where they bring in, especially at-risk students, they bring them in 2 weeks early, and they actually give them I think it's a $50 a week stipend or something, and pay the room and board, and they put them right there at the dorms, and they introduce them to college life early, and they give them some training on how to study and some of the things that you were talking about in the study session about financial, not getting yourself in a financial bind and things like that. That's one of the things that made the list. Enforcement of prerequisites was another one. I guess there's some problems where prerequisites aren't enforced, and student gets in a class and they don't have the right background, they're going to not be successful, and the more unsuccessful they are, the more likely they are to not be successful in school, period. So obviously that's an issue. Placement tests, there's some discussion nationwide about placement tests, how they're used, what, could we strengthen our placement tests, when should we make a student take placement tests. Currently a student could have had math, I'll just pick on math because that seems to be the big one, but math 930 10 years ago, and they come in and they're eligible to take math 1400, but they probably aren't ready for that, and so then that leads to some unsuccessful student. Advising, and I know this is one that Dr. Schaefer's talked about specifically. He's right on task when he talks about intrusive advising. That's the new thing, and so we're going to let faculty talk a little bit about that and what they think about that. If that would be something we could do and support, and I'm sure it's going to get done even without our support, but faculty would like to be involved in some of these things. Individual success plans, some colleges are doing these individual success plans that help students identify what their goals are, their long-term goals, and what their short-term goals are to get to them long-term goals. That is, how am I going to get a B average in for this semester? Well, maybe I'm only going to take 15 hours instead of 18 hours, or that sort of thing. Late enrollment come up, ending late enrollment. I can tell you from faculty perspective, it's true. Students that get in your class a week into class, they just aren't successful. And so ending that, not allowing students to get in late. Registration, one of the things that's been talked about is students who get frustrated with the registration process. And I'm not talking about just going in line and standing in line registering, but some of it has to do with the way we handle registration. Maybe we could do more of a staggered registration, where a student who is close to graduating has first priority to register over a student who walks in with no credits, because sometimes that stands in their way. They need one class and they didn't get in at midnight when the phone line's open, and so they just give up and go on to the university or whatever. And so that was something to come up. Technology, and this is sort of twofold. What kinds of technologies could we be using to help students succeed? And how are some of the technologies we're currently using hindering success? A lot of discussion about how our technologies on campus don't necessarily speak to each other. Students can't forward their Eagle's Eye email to the email that they use, and so consequently when I email them through Eagle's Eye, they don't ever get the email, and so could we use our technology better? And are there some other technologies that would help them be more successful? Holistic campus assessment and evaluation. I've heard Dr. Schaefer talk about this. With focus on student learning, assessing and evaluating all functions of campus, and there's probably some we could identify specifically in instruction. Are they the best use of our resources, and could we change them to make them better? With the final goal being student success. First year seminar, I know we made some changes to the first year seminar, but is it something that should be required? Are there some things we're leaving out of the first year seminar that should be in there? You had a discussion earlier in the study session about the financial piece of that. I think that's interesting because I see it with students who don't really understand. I'm not talking about, as Dr. Kilty was talking about, investing, but students who, in their current situation, they get this big student loan and they blow it and they don't, and then they're not set up to be successful. They have to go work a bunch of nights, mid-semester. They have to start working to keep going, and instead of using that money to help them go through the semester. There was some discussion about concurrent enrollment and dual enrollment. That's sort of twofold. There's research out there on both sides of that. One is, specifically talking about concurrent enrollment. There's some parties that would say, well, it sort of hinders a student. They get some college credits without the college atmosphere, and if we didn't have the concurrent enrollment, then we could pursue maybe dual enrollment, that is getting students to our campus if they're more successful that way. And we have a great opportunity here at LCCC, I'll say, because we offer students free classes if they're in high school and they want to come out and take a class. And so there's that discussion. There's also the other side of it that we hear that getting students any kind of college credit will help them be more successful. And so there's kind of two parties there. And then developmental students, obviously, I talked about this morning, is there a better way to serve developmental students? We've tried some things in the math lab, whether they're successful or not, I don't know. I haven't seen any statistics, but is there a way to help? An awful lot of students coming in, they're developmental. Is there a way to help them be more successful? Or is there a way to work with the high schools to help students come in so they're not in developmental classes? So these are some ideas that task force come up with. We will share these ideas with faculty tomorrow. and ask them for their input. We'll probably come up with a handful, I'm thinking 2 or 3 actionable plans to present to College Council and ask that maybe we could do something about some of these things. So I'll take any questions you have. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sure.
Jeff, I want to go back to what you were talking about, something about a holistic assessment of the whole student experience here, something like that, right? You talked about that. Would you clarify for me, is that something that Faculty Senate wants to do, or clarify for me what that is?
Well, I don't know that Faculty Senate wants to do any of these projects. We're looking for ideas. I mean, certainly we'll help where we can, and that's probably not one we can help a lot with. But we're looking for ideas to help students be more successful, and that's been tossed around. This holistic assessment that is assessing all, and I think Dr. Schaefer's talked about when he talks about program reviews. That's what he's talking about.
Okay.
I assume.
I see it as a little different, but, so what you're saying is that's something that student faculty recommends someone in the college do, or the college council does, or, because I think that's an interesting concept, so
Well,
when you threw that out as an idea, who did you picture would be doing?
So all of these ideas come from research that we've read, or some of them, like, for example, I know the Bridge program Eastern Wyoming does come from a specific faculty member, but we thought it was good. They're all ideas that we feel as a group might help student success, right? And that one comes primarily about from this, are we putting the right resources in the right places? Is there a way to assess whether that's happening?
Sure. Any other questions for Jeff? Thanks, sir.
Thanks.
And lastly, LCCC EA. We have a report. Okay. And
Okay, Mr. Chair, members of the board, the EA officers met with Dr. Joe this afternoon, and the EA completely supports the direction he's taking the college and his state of the college address. Some of the things we discussed were ways that student fees could be reduced and centralization of student success activities on campus. The other thing we talked about was the importance of faculty within a content area having their offices physically located near each other in pods to enhance collaboration. And he's working on that in future remodeling and building plans. So are there any questions? It was a very short meeting. He had very little time.
any questions, Ann?
Hey, thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, and I will take some public comment if there is any on our reports. Then let me, I'm going to insert a little topic here very quickly. I don't know much about it. I wasn't here this morning when they announced that Tom Bauman passed this morning. And yeah, Tom did pass this morning, and I'm going to throw the baton over to Joe because he knows a little bit more about it. So Joe, maybe you can help me out a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and I may ask the Associate Vice President Murphy to help out here too. She received a call that Tom had passed away in his sleep about 3 o'clock this past morning, and he passed away peacefully. His wife and his family are grateful for his accident that way. And I believe that your approval of the naming of the Tom Bauman Road and the subsequent activities that we were able to do just a few short weeks ago really probably provided a capstone to this life. And so it was an impressive opportunity. I think it was a well-placed opportunity, and certainly recognizing an individual who helped put us in this room tonight. In fact, many of us, we wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for the efforts of
Thank you.
Your Lutheran Church on Dale Range. This is that. And we're going out to the family, some people join him, and Brenda Foley was also very much.
Thank you, Janice. And then I guess I'm just going to call for a moment of silence.
Okay. Let's go on to the President's report. President Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I will try to keep my remarks brief. Will I say that every time? Just some quick updates. First of all, status of the Vice President searches. It is my pleasure to introduce you, for those of you that haven't been here, to Judy Hay. Judy Hay is our new Vice President of Student Services. She was gracious enough to take a good chunk of this week. Oh, sorry. She was gracious enough to take a good chunk of her week out to come join us for the fall kickoff. She will start formally on September 10th here, so thanks for coming down, Judy. Appreciate it. An update on the Vice President of Academic Affairs. For those of you that were following it, we did bring 3 candidates to campus, 3 finalists to campus that went through the interview process. After a considerable conversation with the search committee, reviewing the feedback from the campus, examining the reference reports and interactions with the candidates, I have decided to continue that search. And we will continue that with a new pool being developed here probably in the next couple of weeks, and we'll start that recruitment process and have to extend our timeline slightly. The candidates were all exceptional individuals and brought some very unique and praiseworthy skills, attributes. But in the end, consulting those folks that worked closely with this individual, consulting the search committee, as well as the information that we had at hand, the fit just wasn't there. And we're going to make the appropriate hire and the right hire and get the person that will help lead the academic of our institution. So that timeline will extend now into the fall. We are going to shoot to have that completed and hopefully an offer on the table sometime before Christmas or even earlier, so that we can look for a spring semester start date. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll keep you updated as that search continues.
Mr. Chairman, Joe, can I
Yes.
ask you a quick question? When you said a new pool, are you receiving new applications, or are you going through the folks who had already applied to this, into the final class?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Little, after consulting the search committee as well as our search consultant, Angela Kovar of the Poly Group, we will certainly notify those candidates who were in the pool, qualified candidates who were in the pool, but we are actually going to start afresh and build an entire new pool. So it's very likely that some of those will continue their application, but we believe that with this new time frame, that one of the challenges with the search that we knew going into it was that we had an accelerated search in a very non-traditional time frame, especially for the recruitment of academic executives. Our hope is that by looking into the semester in the fall, we may actually generate a different pool, although we anticipate seeing some of the same applicants in it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, a couple of quick other things. We did go in and present and participate in the Joint Corporations Committee meeting back at the beginning of the month, or actually on the end of July. This meeting was specifically for them to hear from the state agencies on our proposed answers to the 8% cuts that Governor Matt Need asked all the agencies to bring forward. There was considerable discussion at the meeting on reversions and how we would handle reductions in the health benefits that the commission appropriates on a reimbursement basis, and also on some of the capital construction conversations. In the end, the Joint Appropriations Committee did approve the proposed 8% reductions. What that means for the community colleges, it was about $7.5 million reduction for college aid at LCCC. That would equate to about $1.8 million should those 8% cuts go through. I think there's considerable dialogue out there still about the reality of whether or not we will see those 8% reductions. And just looking at the natural gas prices and the fluctuations and the revenue, the actual revenue streams into the state, it'll be an interesting legislative session, but I think there's considerable hope that the 8% reductions will actually be taken off the table during the legislative session. Real briefly, legal services update. We are in the process, as you know, recruiting or selecting legal services for the college. I just want to let you know that we'll be interviewing 5 firms. Mr. Chairman, you know this, Trustee Little. We'll be doing 4 of those on August 28th, 1 on September 4th. We would like to invite and encourage all board members to participate. President's cabinet members will be there as well. This is an opportunity for us to have an interaction with those firms so that we can get to know them a little bit better and ultimately make a decision on which one we will want to represent us. I do want to throw in a quick facilities update just so you know. We should be bringing an updated level 1 study to you hopefully by your study session, your study session in September for the University and Student Center. It is complete and currently, I believe, in Vice President Hoagland's office for review, and we will route that through the internal channels and get that up through the board. That's moving along, and we're going to move right into the level 2 planning process as well, keeping with that accelerated plan. And then I also just found out today from Dr. Stahlnecker that the joint level 1 planning committee for the Albany County campus expansion on UW's campus will meet for its first time tomorrow. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we are moving along. And then just briefly, more of a plug for your fellow trustees to maybe fill in. We were in Douglas on August 2nd for our Wyoming Community College Commission meeting. I will actually reserve any comments or questions you might have there and let them update you on that meeting. I think it was a fair meeting, and the 2 most salient points are that we will be asked to engage and be involved in an updated strategic planning process with the Commission on September 17th. And then really it was more of a conversation and really them feeling the way this new CapCon process will work out as they looked at projects that didn't need legislative funding but still had to move through the approval and authorization process. But I'm sure the trustees that were there will have comments later on. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Any questions for Joe? Maybe those topics. Any public comment? If none, we'll move forward. Board reports. Finance and Facilities Committee.
We would have had our monthly meeting last Tuesday, but there were people not around. Not a great deal to discuss at the time, so we all decided to just cancel it. However, I would like one clarification, and that is that I thought our budget discussion tonight was fine. We were really talking about funding priorities. There are some additional, I think, budget topics that the board needs to address, and I just wanted to make sure that we had something on a future study session. Did we schedule anything for the study session in September?
I'm not sure what our agenda.
We're having a policy discussion.
Yes.
John and I, we're going to be bringing you draft policy
Okay.
at that session.
How long do you think your staff will be?
15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Did you say, John? More? Yeah, maybe more.
We'll double that.
That's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Okay, well, so if we have about half an hour there, I mean, we have time, and Kevin, I agree with you. I think now's the time to talk about it, and I would look to yours and Ed's leadership to bring something forward. And Vicki will put that on the agenda. Okay. Super. College Communications and Relations Committee.
Well, we haven't had a meeting per se, and of course, campus is getting more. But I would like to say that, and I did tell Bill this, that this morning's session was absolutely a marvelous piece of communication to not only all the faculty, but to anybody else who was there. And of course, Pete Simpson gave a marvelous talk that had its serious and salient points, but also a lot of wonderful humor. And when he concluded, when Joe gave him that very nice coin, he says that, well, I can get a lot of money for this on eBay. It sort of was sort of a final cap to a very delightful thing. But Joe did a fabulous job explaining all of the different aspects of what he is planning for the school for the next year. And so in terms of communications and relations, I thought it couldn't have been a better start.
Well, thank you for those words. Okay, and lastly, the governance committee, John and or Brenda.
We had a meeting scheduled for the week before last, but John and I and Joe emailed each other and said, oh, we're not quite ready, and we've got all kinds of other things going on. And so, we are now meeting on August 22nd. Vicki has come up with a form that Joe provided for us. That's a two-part form that we're gonna be using, and this is what the trustees will see. Where the top of the form has what the policy is, and then the bottom, the procedures. We're gonna leave the procedures blank, and so when we come to you in September, there will be policy on the top, the procedures, that the procedures part will be left blank. But we have every intention of bringing something to the board, at the September study session.
Great,
Yes.
thank you. Looking forward to seeing it. What day is that around? Just
We're
say
meeting
that
on
is
the-
going to be, well, our study session is
Oh,
on the
yeah.
5th, so.
Right.
Okay, so we'll have two major topics. Okay? Am I correct on that? Yes. Okay. Looks like we have a special WACCT report from John and Ed. Gentlemen? There you go.
The Complete College America participation, I believe that forwarded it to you in a separate email. And what that is an national private organization that has gone out and solicited. Steve said to me today that out of Wisconsin, so that's 33 or 32 other states that are participating in this. And the caveat was that the reason we decided to primarily go forward with it was that we want to hear this guy out and see what he has to offer. It's a simple movement. Dan Jones, I told you. And so he is our primary speaker for the next item on there, and that's why when Steve talked to the governor's office, they said that they wouldn't be interested in joining this association if the three entities, and I'm not sure why they always make it three entities, where it's the trustees and the commissioners and the presidents, as if the presidents have standalone authority. But anyway, that's the way the governor looks at it, because the presidents spend more time in his office than the trustees do. Maybe we should change that, but that's another subject. So we have all three entities that have submitted a letter to the governor, but as of this morning, Steve hadn't heard where the governor stands on his final decision. So, decided to do the WACCT board voted to approve membership in it, and Steve already submitted that letter as I stated. But we didn't decide that the individual boards needed to. We said go ahead since we already had that authority from the boards to do so, and just keep you informed as to what was going on. So with that, Stan Jones will be the primary presenter at the second annual Community College Summit, and it will be held in Casper in September instead of Cheyenne in November, as last year. And my understanding is it'll probably be in the same room, but don't hold me to that we had our, whatever we called that last month at Casper College. Yeah, that's what Dr. Rose called it, but I didn't want to call it that. It sounded too condescending. So, your attendance would be greatly appreciated, that, just like the rest of the previous meetings after. We hope to move forward from this as far as completion in Wyoming and come up with somewhat of a definition as to what completion means in Wyoming.
I would just say that there were quite a few questions the trustees did have a rather lengthy discussion regarding completion and whether or not we should pursue that, what the ramifications or implications were, what the benefit would be, and I think it was unanimous, no, it was not. This did not work. But the point is, you know, all colleges did have representation to affect who vote for it. And the perception is we really want to listen to stand generals, hear what he has to say at the summit. And then as colleges look at this from a state perspective, decide what action they might take. I did share an article, I think, with fellow trustees about Texas's experience with that, and it's not really clear why they had some interesting results from their effort, but just for simplicity, they had a grant and they lost the continuation of that grant in the Texas schools. Why nobody, or the article did not tell us. I hope we can find out down the road, but it is something that does provide some funding, I think, that might be available to the state system at some point that could be the benefit. Other than that, I'm not real sure, other than giving us a focus on completion, is what those benefits might be. And the 18th is the date, September.
Okay, any other questions? Regarding WACCT? Okay, if none, that's the end of our board reports. Any public comment on board reports? Okay, if none, we're going to move forward. And I am going to take a little executive privilege and move item number 7 above item number 6. So, to give us a little bit of time on the Kaiser County presentation. So I guess I got Stan Torvik and Mary Ellen Tass. You want to chat with us a little bit about what we got going on here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you are, I'm sure, aware, there are sweeping changes coming in the healthcare delivery system in this country in the coming years. Of more urgent interest to us locally and regionally is a change that has been mandated previously and is about to take effect. As many of you know, the current medical coding system that's in use throughout the country is referred to as ICD-9. Starting at the end of next year, throughout the country, a change must be made to a new coding system that is called ICD-10. We've been developing a curriculum to accomplish this for about 2 years now in partnership with CRMC and other medical providers in the community. And as we have moved forward with this, it became more obvious to us that there is a great deal of urgency to retrain existing coders that are already in the system, the new system of ICD-10. So in partnership with Wyoming Hospital Association, we are offering for non-credit at this juncture training for those who are already in the system. We anticipated about 25 people might enroll in this, and to our surprise, it's more than 90. And so we really have to scramble in order to, we're offering more sections actually, in order to accommodate that. There is a further problem, however. Many of these coders are aging out of the system, which is probably not a very nice way of saying they're getting ready for retirement. And many of them don't want to be retrained and are just going to simply retire. Which means we need to begin training immediately a new generation of coders for ICD-10. Concurrent with that, we are moving in the country to electronic records, and many of the existing personnel in records are not familiar with the new system. So we also need to be training electronic records keeping. Also with that, many of those who operate the front offices of medical offices throughout the state and the region are also preparing to retire. So we need to be preparing a new set of workforce for those front office activities. This program of study includes a certificate and an Associate of Applied Science degree, and it includes all 3 of those levels. The training for medical coding and ICD-10, electronic record keeping, and also preparing people with the proper skill sets in order to manage that front office and many of the physicians' offices. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mary Ellen Tass, and she's going to introduce some of our guests in the audience who have an interest in this program, as well as explain the details of this program.
Thank you, Stan. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you so much for allowing us to come tonight. I would be remiss if I didn't take a minute and thank some of our partners out there in the community who came tonight in support of this program. I'd first like to introduce Mr. Dan Perdue, who's the president of the Wyoming Hospital Association and also a member of the Wyoming Workforce Development Council. Dawn Puente, while she is a working professional in the medical office for over 20 years, 10 of it is in management, Dawn has also been integral working with Laramie County Community College in the non-credit training that we have been doing both with the Wyoming Hospital Association and also with several cohorts of Climb Wyoming that we've recently put through with an introduction to health information technology. And then Kim Wells, if I'd like to introduce you to Kim, she is a HEMA certified ICD-10 trainer, and Kim is also a coding auditor at Warren Air Force Base. Both Kim and Dawn have been, I can't even thank them enough for the work that they've put in working with industry professionals in our region to help us develop this program, much of which was done on their own time. So I'd like to take a moment and recognize them for their hard work in the development of this program. The program was developed because of the great need and the sweeping changes, as Stan has said, to this industry, and it's almost a perfect storm of changes that are happening right now. As you know, electronic health records are just becoming more prevalent. They're really taking on a whole new world of their own, and they're just delving into every area of healthcare, and marrying that up with the changes to the international the ICD-10 International Classification of Diseases, which is going to actually happen. They've actually moved that date out to 2014, which you might think, wow, that gives us a little bit more time, but the changes between ICD-9 and ICD-10 are so drastic that is, as Stan pointed out, there are industry professionals out there that we have talked to that are just not willing to make the change and learn the new code sets. They are planning on retiring before they have to learn that. And then the ones that do have to learn it, there's a whole new retraining going on because of that. And so we've got two huge pieces happening there, not to mention the standards have just recently changed as of June 30th. And so there's a number of things that contribute to the demand for coders, not only coders, but medical office assistants, medical secretaries, and just a myriad of different positions that require coders out there. And not only is it just in hospitals and medical offices, the things that we just normally think of right away, but it's also pharmacies, insurance carriers. There's a myriad of other organizations out there that require these skill sets. And what I did was, in case any of you are interested, there's a survey that was done by AHIMA, the American Health Information Management Association, that really gives you a really robust picture of all of the careers that are out there for these skill sets and the various industries that hire them. So if anybody's interested in that, I do have it. I brought it along, and I'm more than willing to leave here and share it with you if you'd like to do a little bit more research on it, because it really is fascinating. As Stan pointed out, it's a three-tiered program. It addresses entry-level positions in medical offices and front-level positions in hospitals. It addresses coding positions to certify for a certified coding specialist or certified coding associate, which is the second tier. And the third tier is a management position. It was based on AHIMA standards and guidelines to ensure quality. And the program of study you saw was reviewed by industry professionals in our community before it was put forth to you this evening. And so with that being said, I'd like to open it up for questions.
Yes, sir.
I have a number of questions. I guess we can go back and forth with some other people here. The first one is, where in the college would this program be administered from? Is this under our health sciences program?
That's exactly right, Trustee Kilty. While it was started in workforce because it was non-credit, it is going to be housed in health sciences. And with that being said, once a full-time position is hired and a dean is hired over that division, that whole program would move down to that division.
But not until it gets a full-time faculty
Well,
Would still be out of workforce until that time?
What I would say is if, and right now Stan Torvik is the dean over health sciences, so I would defer to him on that question, but I would say that that hasn't been fully decided yet.
Trustee Kilty, the position is in the current budget that you approved. And as soon as that position is hired, we will be bringing them on board.
I don't recall that position on the budget we approved.
It's-
I remember other positions on the budget, but not that one.
It's part of the budget that was approved, yes.
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Kilty, part of this was the shift of an existing health sciences program faculty member to the general fund budget that was currently funded by, help me out here, the state, creating this specific term, Carol, can you help me? The State Health Endowment Project or something similar to that. So they're state funds that were. What's that? No, it's a different subsidy. Can you even correct that?
Higher education endowment fund.
The Higher Education Endowment Fund. So we shifted one faculty member off of that to general fund dollars, and then this faculty position will be hired and put onto those funds.
Well, just for the record, I want to state that was not at all clear in that budget. And just let me say that I read President's cabinets from, I think, May or maybe it was April. And I read minutes from President's cabinet, and I saw this full-time position was being talked about. It said it would be in the budget, but it was not clearly there at all. So, you know, let me just put it this way. It looks like a full-time faculty position. You've now got a claim on it, and that's full-time faculty position is basically gone for next year. We're only talking about another 5 or 6 like we do per year. So what I'm trying to say is this looks like it's outside the ordinary process of putting together faculty. That's all I'm going to say. It looks extraordinary. Let me ask a couple of other questions. Do you already have in mind a faculty person for this?
No, we are currently looking to see who might be out there for current position.
So you're going to actually put together a hiring committee, and this will be hired the same way as other positions on campus.
We will follow the same procedure as we do with all faculty. Yes.
All right. Now, there's one class in the curriculum I noticed that's just got XXXX for its number. Is this a class that's under development?
Yes, it is. It's a class under development. I believe it's a pharmaceutical class.
It's a pharmacology class.
Pharmacology class, and Kay Wagner is developing that class for us.
Okay. Another thing that's kind of interesting, you remember we had some discussion over a program last November, and one of the things that I asked for is if you've gone ahead and done the study to show that this program will pay for itself, but there's, you surely could put together a budget at that point, but we see no budget in this. It would just be nice to see those sorts of things.
And Trustee Kilty, I agree with you completely. If you look at the templates that's being used for the programs of study, there is no place in that template to include a budget. But we did put together a budget, and I can tell you that based on the budget and the cost that we are anticipating for that position and for overhead costs, this program would generate, based on the number of students that we're anticipating for the first year, approximately about a $6,000 profit in the first year.
Well, and that brings up something kind of interesting. In your own projections in here, we're talking about, it seemed to me that we were talking about fairly small numbers of students, because the Wyoming population here went over a 10-year period from about 300 to 360. And I think you were talking about 10 positions a year. But you see that there's going to be an awful lot more students.
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you just this week alone, a number of things have happened since this program was designed, and thank you for bringing that up. One of them is the training that we've just recently done with Wyoming Hospital Association and the number of responses that we had for just the retraining of coders that are out there in ICD-10. And another example of that is the training that we've just recently done with Klein, Wyoming. Those students were placed immediately upon completion of those positions. And talking with just some providers this week, we know that CRMC has 2 open positions, and another billing service provider in the community has 2 open positions. If you run Wyoming at Work for our region, there are at least 10 positions open just alone in our region currently. And just recently we did a poll with about 14 hospitals that are participating right now in the hospital association training that we're doing. And we're receiving approximate amounts of about 50 new coders, that's just coders, not medical office assistants, not some of those other positions, but just 50 coders alone that are going to be needed for each year in the next 5 years. So it tells us that that original projection was way underestimated. It was taken from ONET, which I know that all of you know is, normally very low. They really estimate low, but actually getting out there and talking to our community and investigating with some of the folks that we're currently working with through our training, those projections are going to be much higher. If you just take the most recent projections at ONET alone for medical assistants, medical office assistants, coders, you're looking at probably about 80 positions in Wyoming. And if you look at our region, our tri-state region of Nebraska, Colorado, and Wyoming, that number is probably close to about 700. I think it comes in at about 690 positions.
You know, if we're going to talk about positions in the region, then probably we need to know what other competitors there are in the region. But if we just look at Wyoming, you have a table in here that shows there are 5 other schools that have a similar program in Wyoming. And as you know, one of the interests of the state is not to duplicate these programs too much. So what can you tell me about duplication or not?
Oh, you bet. Actually, those programs are not similar to what we're proposing at all. What we're proposing is what you saw in that proposal were primarily office assistant types of positions with some focus on medical office content. What we're proposing is a program that's dedicated entirely to 3 tiers of medical health information management. Entry level, as I mentioned earlier, coding, which, and this differentiates us from the rest of the programs as well, which were developed to marry up with the AHIMA requirements for coding certifications. And coding certifications are very difficult to come by, so we know right now that training is needed even for the incumbent workforce that's out there. So that second tier of training for training both training incoming workers and incumbent workers to help them pass those coding certifications. And then the third tier is the management tier, and none of the existing programs in the state address the management tier of it at all. Oh, and if I could just add one more thing too, I'm so sorry, please forgive me. The other piece to this is our eventual goal for this program is to become AHIMA accredited, and at that point then we would be able to offer the highest level of the certificate, which is the Registered Health Information Technician position. And the closest school is Scottsbluff that offers a certification of that nature.
Okay, so this probably answers a couple of other questions I had along the way. I wasn't sure at what level we were really talking about training somebody for coding, because the first level looked like it was much too low for that. And then I was very curious about this. There was a course in there on leadership, and I thought that's very odd when there's nothing in there that seems to be devoted to something like anatomy, which you would think somebody in coding should really have. So could you just illuminate that for me?
Absolutely. Actually, we do actually have a human body systems course in there, and actually our own academic standards committee recommended the human body systems course for this program, and that is the course that actually marries up with the coding pieces, and it's going to be cross-referenced with those courses. So we do have that piece in there, but because the third tier of this piece is focused primarily on management positions, that's why that leadership course is in there.
Yeah, okay, so that now makes a lot more sense to me. These human body systems courses, are they already taught here?
What we did was we really sat down with faculty across campus to identify what courses could be that are already existing that could be incorporated. And then we talked with some staff across campus of some of the new courses that we needed, specifically such as the pharmacology, and what could be developed in the most appropriate areas on campus. So the pharmacology is an example of that one.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Trustees approve the Health Information Technology Program and recommends the Wyoming Community College Commission approve the program at its October 19th, 2012 meeting at Northwest College.
Second. Second. Okay, we continue discussion. I just wanted to move forward here. Do we have any more discussion?
Yeah, I do have a little. Just out of curiosity, why not move it down to health sciences like right away, as long as Stan is the dean down there?
You know, actually, there is really no reason why we couldn't do that. I mean, it truly is one area right now, Trustee Kilty, so.
I will make a plea to keep Mary Ellen involved for a period of time because she's already undertaken the non-credit training, working closely with the Hospital Association. And as we move toward the credit program, absolutely we'll move down to health sciences and wellness.
Thanks, Dan. Really, we don't need to get into the management side of this. I'm really looking for trustee discussion here. Yes, Ed?
Tell me about the 90 people you got waiting out there. Are you talking level 1, level 2, level 3, or what?
Oh, well, the 90 people that we're talking about that we're doing the incumbent worker training on, is that what you're referring to right now?
I thought you indicated you had 90 people waiting to get into this program.
Well, we actually have both. We have the incumbent worker training. We're doing a project with the Wyoming Hospital Association where we are utilizing one of the few AHIMA certified ICD-10 trainers in our region, Kim Wells, to help existing workers, which are not, there are 90 of those, gain the skills to transfer the skills from ICD-9 to ICD-10. Now, if you look at ONET, or even more realistically, the survey that we just recently did with our hospitals that we're working with, we identified approximately between medical office assistants and coder positions about another 90 to 100 open positions that are going to be needed for each year for the next 5 years.
Okay, but when we talk about the 90, that working with the Wyoming Hospital Administration right now in terms of retraining, which is a question I've got. You know, having done training for the Hospital Association many years ago, are they providing, or the employers providing assistance to the students in getting the upgrade? I'm just curious about that.
I'm not quite, or with the training or with salary increases? I'm sorry.
When the college offered courses throughout the state, and helped with the super debts, and many years ago for supervisory training, the hospitals throughout the state paid for that additional training for those folks. I was just wondering if the hospitals are providing some of that cost for those students.
Actually, we're working with the grant with the Wyoming Department of Workforce Services. DWS identified the need to do this training, and so they have provided us with a grant for at least the first 2 tiers of training, which is 60 individuals. The 3rd tier will be another 30. And so we have a grant from DWS because of it being a high demand occupation.
Okay, when I looked at this, you know, the curriculum out there, I think your curriculum that you have pretty well matches up with the curriculum that they recommend. I mean, that looks like that's already done, as I looked at it out there. Additionally, when I looked at this, I kind of wondered, because there are probably, I didn't count exactly, but 15 at least exams that one could take. And those exams get pretty pricey. In Colorado, I know because of friends involved in that, $300 I think for the coding exam, one of those. There are many. And I'm just wondering, since we talked earlier this evening about cost to students, wow, these programs are expensive. The certifications are expensive, but if you read the AHIMA survey that I brought along with me, Trustee Mercer, about 50% or more employers out there now are estimating that you will be required to have at least a CCS certification to be a coder within the next 10 years. So while they are expensive, we're moving in towards the trend of requiring at least that certified coding specialist certification. Okay, and then when I looked at the pay, there's 2 things that I'm concerned about. Is that pay, if you were to look at a single parent and 2 children, I thought that pay got a little close to the poverty level. And so a student spending quite a bit of money and winding up going to work in a job that doesn't pay that much, at least in the beginning. So they've got to make that leap over time. That's going to be plus pay their college expenses. I have some issues with that.
Well, the pay in Wyoming is between $31,000 to $33,000 a year. But the median pay for a coder is around, in Wyoming, with some of the coding participants that we're working with right now, is about $45,000 a year. And once you get into management, you're looking, and if you look at the AHIMA survey, the numbers can range somewhere between $33,000 to $45,000 a year as well for entry level to median salaries. And if you look at and move into management positions and certifications, and that's the big key word here is the certifications, then you're looking upwards of 45 to probably about 65,000 a year. So I think that the opportunities, and again, as I mentioned before, and again, I'd be more than happy to leave the survey with you, is that there are just a myriad of types of positions out there.
That's later. I'm worried about the student coming out of school, starting, what do we get?
Coming out of school starting on an average is about 31 to 33,000 a year.
The other thing, in the curriculum, year to year to me, you've got the leadership class and you've got a management 1500 class. And I'm saying, you're talking about preparing these people for management, and I'm sorry, but I don't feel that you're really putting forth the kind of management background that you really ought to be offering students. That's just my personal opinion, and I'll leave it at that. The last thing I'd like to mention in terms of the program that I'm concerned about is I've spoken with some coders, again, different states, but they go to their I believe the AAPA meetings, people unemployed, another one unemployed, just every meeting that this person has referred to me. I know it's anecdotal. This is in a larger state though, and I'm just kind of trying to figure out, there seems to be a discrepancy in what I hear for our state versus what I hear for a much more highly populated state. So I don't know what's going on there.
Well, if I could address that with you too, Trustee Mosier, if you read every piece of data that's out there, there is nothing but based evidence that's saying that those positions are out there and they're just growing. Everything from the Bureau of Labor Statistics to the AHIMA survey, everything that's out there states those positions are open. I can tell you just a couple of phone calls this week. We found out that CRMC has 2 openings. Another billing service in this community has 2 openings. And as far as we know of, there are no layoffs in our region right now at all. That every piece of evidence that is out there is saying that these positions are in demand, and because of that perfect storm that I talked about earlier with the sweeping technology changes and the code set changes that are coming, those positions are even going to become more prevalent.
Last question. There was a job advertised today in the paper, and I'm just wondering if those entities, clinics and other stuff, are they willing to pay for the person who's coming out of school with a certificate or the second level? Will they get better pay than the person who doesn't go to school?
Well, and that, oh yes, I'm sorry.
I'm Kim Wells. I'm the ICD-10 trainer for AHIMA. Yes, they're going to make more with the certification. What you see with like College America is that they're not taking the AHIMA certification and they're not taking the AAPC. When a company is willing to pay for that coder certification, they're paying for the knowledge that comes with billing to the highest level. If you get someone that goes right out of high school, which 25 years ago you could do and get a job on the job training, but with the electronic medical record, all of the requirements out of Washington right now as far as what those records will look like, what you're getting paid for, the clinics and the hospitals are willing to pay for the certified trainers in order to guarantee that the records are right and they're getting the highest billable income back into their clinics.
Okay, any other questions?
Just a quick comment. It doesn't really involve anything to do with anything else, but it's become apparent to me that if we propose programs, and we improve them, these have a tendency to be able to move the college in a strategic direction that maybe the board never anticipated. And that's why I think it's entirely appropriate for the board to do they fit into our current programs? And Trustee Little brought this up at dinner tonight. What are the college's strengths? Well, I would argue for a long time, the college chased every rabbit that came out of the brush. And that we didn't really have any focus in a particular direction that we could call our strengths. We just seem to be all over the place. Now, this program looks like it fits in pretty nicely with a lot of the other health programs, right? And so we have, I just sort of feel like maybe we haven't articulated it, but health programs are maybe becoming a focus of this college. So this fits into the strategic direction. But I think the board needs to question people hard about this in terms of budget. How many people is it going to serve? Does it meet state strategic directions? Does it meet our own college strategic directions? And so forth. And maybe we just need to sit down and enumerate things that ought to go in the submission ahead of time that would answer a lot of these things. You know,
I agree.
Frankly, when it comes right down to it, we on the board don't look at individual new course offerings, but if you offer enough of those, that will change the strategic direction of the college too. They all take resources, and we only have so many resources. So, you know,
Well,
people,
Kevin,
people really need to think about these things hard.
No, I agree with you, and I do recommend, and Mary Ellen, you said, I know this is their form, but maybe Joe and whoever the power to be, that if there are some specific things that the trustees want to know on the upfront, it's not in that form, that we get our own little form that goes on the cover of that, so that's all that problem. Okay, I'm gonna try to move us forward, because we've got some other things to get done. We've got a motion on the floor. Any other discussion?
Just one very quick one, no questions. Once we approve these go forward to the vice presidents, well, vice presidents of academic affairs statewide. They then move those forward to the commission. But there's no looking deeper. That's why, again, I think that we need to be very careful as we look at these, because that just kind of moves on after that.
I understand, and your point is well taken. So, okay, any other questions? Any other discussion? Discussion, no more? Let's take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you for your vigorous discussion. Okay. Building forward, facilities plan projects and financing options. Vice President Carol Hogan and Dan Baxter with Kaiser.
Trustee Thomas, Board of Trustees, I'd like to introduce to you Dan Baxter and Todd Bishop from Kaiser and Company. We are presenting the information that you had requested in the last meeting regarding options for funding for our building forward plan. With that, Dan?
Thank you, Carol. And then let me just say, we are in a kind of a time crunch, and I don't want to take anything away from it. I guess what I'm looking for, Dan, give us a good overview, let us chew on this, and we'll probably have you right back.
Hey,
So that's how I'd like to look at it.
I like your
I looked at your stuff, and
I really do.
I looked at your stuff, and I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff to digest, so let me just have a snack on it.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, my name's Dan Baxter with Kaiser and Company. I have my partner, Todd Bishop with Kaiser with us as well. Since our last meeting, Mr. Chairman, we've been meeting with Carol and meeting with some other folks, going over your building forward capital facilities plan and looking at financial alternatives. And pleased to be here this evening to, again, try to provide a very quick, broad overview of some of those options and give you something to think about. And then obviously we'd like to come back as soon as possible to get after it in more detail. So I think just doing that so we can go forward. One of the first things before we could kind of get into financial options, we wanted to get at least a rough idea of what the total cost was that you're looking at for your particular projects. So we had already had seen within your plan estimates for the University Center, the Flex Tech building totaling $36 million. We had some square footages that was provided within your plan for the residence halls as well as the non-traditional housing. And we were able to call on some of our architectural friends that we do a lot of business with, and based on square footages, provide the board tonight with some cost estimates for those projects. And of course, the Fine Arts Center is a little bit further out. I think that's 36 million was an estimate that was in your plan. And further out is the campus rehabilitation of 20 million. So overall, on a very rough estimate basis, we're looking at a pretty big plan for LCCC. Over $100 million in improvements over a number of years. One of the first options, in my experience working with colleges for the last 30 years in Wyoming, is the boards look at is general obligation bonds. You're limited, as you might know, to 4% of your assessed valuation. You have bonding limits in Wyoming. Currently, right now, your tax base is getting pretty close to $1 billion. This produces at 4%, about $38 million in bonding capacity that you can actually issue general obligation bonds on that would be supported by a mill levy. That would be in addition to your current 5 mill levy, and that can be used to support repayment of the bonds. The college has been debt-free since June of 2009. Currently, right now, as you know, due to the credit crisis, we are flight for quality. Cost of borrowing as low as they've ever been since I've been in the bond business. We're looking at, especially on general obligation bonds, 1 to 2% is what we're looking at as far as cost of interest. I remember 10%, back in the 80s. General obligation bonds can pay for all or a portion of your proposed project costs. This option could be used to fund 50% or more of the University Center and Flex Tech buildings in 2014, following a November 5th, 2013 election, just as an example. But if we had the election in November of 13, you could issue bonds as early as December of 13 to provide some upfront funding for the project to get it going. And under state statute, most of you may know that you are required to take 7% of bond proceeds and set it aside in an O&M fund to help take care of the buildings once they're financed. So we have to be thinking about that. Your debt rating here for LCCC is the best in the state. I mean, you've got a AA rating on any general obligation bonds that you sell. That's exactly what investors are looking for these days, and that's going to produce a very low cost of borrowing if you go in this direction. So this is a low-cost option, the lowest outside of direct grants, gifts, and appropriations, and it was last used in 2007. One of the components here, of course, in getting this approved by voters is the election campaign. We have to work very hard on that. We would need a call for the election probably in June, give us plenty of time to rally around and be ready for a November general election if we want to do it at the general or the August primary. Last time in 2007, the foundation was actively involved in raising funds and helping promote the bond issue, and we worked a lot with the foundation back in 2007, and would be prepared to do so again at the board's request. It does take a lot of time on behalf of LCCC staff, your administration, to run a very well organized and funded campaign. So you don't want to just go into these deals willy-nilly. It's a big deal. It's going to take some time. You want to do a good job. And you want to make sure going into it that you got a good chance of passing. So that's the thing. You might want to consider doing a survey, a poll before you call for the election to see what the temperature of the voters is in Laramie County. Key questions for taxpayers. What's in it for me? What's it going to cost? Those are always things that we have to address during campaigns. And here's a copy of the last bond issue in 2007, AA rated. Very short-term deal. We only paid it back essentially in about 2.5 years. And all the mill levies for bonds have been off since 2009. Sample bond question. If you decide to proceed in November of next year as an example, or the primary, this would give you an idea of what the bond question would look like. One of the keys in a bond question like this is the total maximum par amount of the authorization that you're seeking. For example, if I was looking at needing $18 million to pay 50% of the University Center and Flex Tech buildings, I might want to think at a minimum of putting about $20 million in that first blank, and then such bonds to mature within 8, 10, 12 years, not to exceed blank percent per annum. Right now that'd be about 2%. You could probably sell the bonds at 1.5 or less. And then the bond funds then would be available for the projects. You can be pretty specific in your bond question and actually name the projects, or you can be very unspecific and just be general, saying it's going to be used for your master plan. So that's really up to you and how you want to call for it. If you're specific in your question, you're going to be really, your legal counsel will tie you to that as far as actually spending the bond proceeds. So something to think about there. One thing finally on the authorization, you could go ahead, for example, and have voters authorize 38 million, and then we only actually sell 18 million within a year or two, and then come back in a couple of years and sell the balance. This authorization is good indefinitely. Where you get hung up is the interest rate. If we put too low of an interest rate in the question, and 2 years later interest rates are much higher, the authorization really is worthless because we can't sell the bonds at those rates. So something to think about there. Alrighty, let's see. Another option that has been used to fund community college improvements is a 1% specific purpose tax. As you know, we have an election coming up here next week for renewal of the 6th penny in Laramie County. As many don't know, we have an unused 7th penny. It's out there, can be used. And you don't have to ask for 1%. You can go 1/4 of 1%, you know, to 0.5% or 0.75%. So you don't need to take the full penny. You could get a 1/4 penny. In Laramie County, the tax generates $1.3 million a month. If the college, for example, went to the county commission and to the towns and was able to get on the ballot, perhaps with some other projects, asked for $30 million, that $30 million could be paid back in 24 months, with about 30% of the cost being paid back from visitors to Laramie County. So tourists and visitors end up paying a lot of this. And this particular option, if it's approved by voters, the college itself can issue revenue bonds, or your building authority can issue lease revenue bonds to provide money up front if it's needed, or of course you're getting a lot of money in pretty quickly, just spend it as it comes in. This was used not too long ago, 8 or 9 years ago, by Sheridan College to fund improvements in Gillette. They needed to put $9 million in classroom improvements in Gillette. The Sheridan College Board went over to Gillette, talked to the county commissioners in Gillette, and they let them put it on the ballot over there for a 1/4 penny, and they were able to get $9 million from this particular mechanism to fund improvements at the Gillette campus. So, and you could do the same thing in Albany County to help fund improvements at your Albany County campus. College revenue bonds, unlike most municipalities, an election is not required to issue college revenue bonds. You must, however, have a designated source of revenue to pay the bonds back, usually residence hall revenues or auxiliary revenues. Pretty restrictive in Wyoming on this particular source of financing. As far as sources of revenues available, it would still probably garner an A- rating, investment grade rating. Higher costs of borrowing than GO bonds, probably 2.5 to 4.5%. You still have to do the 7% O&M fund. But the issuance of college revenue bonds does not affect your general obligation bond debt limits. So if you decide to do GO bonds for a couple projects, you could issue revenue bonds for another one. Public benefit corporation lease revenue bonds. This is really a going trend around the country, off-balance sheet financing in many respects, but under federal tax laws, you can form your own nonprofit corporation. They're called public benefit corporations, and which you did in '05, and they can issue tax-exempt bonds to finance capital facilities, in this case for LCCC for lease back to the college. LCCC may annually appropriate general fund monies, student fees, residence hall rents, or really any other revenues available to the college to make the lease payments. So there's a very broad source of revenues that are available to the college that you can annually appropriate to make payments on lease revenue bonds issued by building authorities, which is why they enjoy a little bit higher credit rating. These type of bond issues carry an A+ rating versus maybe an A- on the straight revenue bond. So so far, the colleges and the building authority has done 2 bond issues, one in '05 and '09. They were A+ rated, and of course the college appoints the directors. So the first issue was in '05. That funded a 184-bed project, the first big residence hall. It cost $8.2 million. It was a design, build, construction managed deal, 20-year term. Bonds rated A-. It was AAA enhanced with insurance. Average rate was pretty good then, and it would be, the rate today would only be a little bit lower than this, 435, and the annual debt service on the bonds range from $600,000 up to $775,000 in later years. And there's a copy of the official statement on the first deal. a schedule there showing the debt service on the '05 residence hall obligations gradually rising over time. And then the recent bond issue we did for the cafeteria improvements, it's backed by student fees that had an average rate right around 5% on that one. And of course a news article explaining the project and the savings. That particular deal was a taxable bond issue under the Build America bond plan. That's the reason the rate was higher, and a lot of the revenue coming to pay those bonds back is from the federal government, which is a good thing. Revenue bonds, kind of pros and cons. Pros, benefits, no election required, tax-exempt financing available, no impact on the college yield bonding capacity, may be issued up front to finance projects. You can use mill levy, sped funds, and other revenues to repay them. On the downside, they have lower bond ratings, higher cost of financing. College must determine if project revenue and other college funds are sufficient to support the debt obligations. And sometimes, like with residence halls, you might need to have a feasibility study or market study to show that if you build it, you can fill them. Of course, one of the other options that the community college access is state capital construction appropriations through the Wyoming Community College Commission. Apply to the commission, and you have to receive legislative appropriation. So that's a great source of funding for a lot of community college projects around the state, and up to 50% funding of project costs is possible from this source. Probably not for residence halls, but certainly for any classroom facilities that you might look at. Private donations, fundraising. One of the big things that entities need to do if they want to raise private funds is to form a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. You already got one. You got a good one. Your foundation, and they can apply for grants from government, corporations, high net worth individuals. I think probably around the state, in our experience, we work with most of the community colleges, and the one that's been very good at leveraging this particular area has been Sheridan College in financing new classrooms and dormitory facilities. They've got the Whitney benefits up there, and they garner interest income off of a large portfolio, and they have been able to receive millions of dollars from that source as well as from the Griffith Trust, and they get commitments over a period of time, so grant commitments, like over a 10-year period, and they've been able to then go ahead and issue bonds up front and then pay those bonds back from the grant receipts they're getting from Whitney over a 10-year period. So that's makes it a lot easier for them to do debt deals, and they've done over 30 million of them through their building authority. Another option that's becoming more popular around the country that the chairman had brought up as something he was real interested in, and I agree, I'm interested in it as well, is the design, build, finance partnerships. Colleges can enter into public-private partnerships for the purpose of designing, building, and financing a new facility with a quantifiable revenue stream, like a residence hall project. And a private partner typically would enter into this agreement with a college, and it's usually a combination. The partnership that comes in and agrees to work with a college can be an architectural firm, a contractor, developer, and they team up. And they come to the college and come into the college and say, we'll go ahead and we'll help design your project, and we'll build it for you, and then we'll finance it through private sources, through our developer, and then we'll manage it for you after you get it built. And then you're on the hook then to make a lease payment over a particular period of time, maybe 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And then at the end of the lease term, you guys would get ownership of the project. So. And these agreements are called off-balance sheet deals, pretty popular, especially in other states, and also for military projects, FU Ward Air Force Base and others. I talked to some entities about that, and everybody's very interested, of course, in talking to you about, how they could present a proposal in this area to do either design, build, CM, or do design, build, bid, and finance for the benefit of the college. So definitely would work well. So some of the firms that were interested, just people that we have talked to just in the last few days that would be interested in partnering with the college under this option for, especially for residence hall type projects. would be FCI Construction, who the college used back in 2005 as construction manager contractor on that particular project, which was similar to this method. And also, in addition to FCI, we've talked to the KWN TSP group out of Sheridan, which is a Wyoming contractor design finance team. They would be most interested, as well as Balfour Beatty, a nationally recognized firm currently doing work on the base, and they've done a number of college projects throughout the country. So all are very interested, and to talk about delivery methods, talk about cost savings and efficiencies associated with a partnership arrangement. So very interesting, and certainly I can look at that.
I think maybe one of the items we skipped over on the slide was the college mill levy option.
Did we miss that? When I was, maybe we did, talking back up.
We did. We can just talk about that. Another financing option, of course, is the use of a mill levy election. It's something that LCCC was successful in utilizing back in 98 for campus renovations. It's an option where the college could ask for up to 5 mills for a period of 4 years. A little bit different in that you're not asking for a specified dollar amount, but really just asking for that mill levy to be in place for that time frame. Right now, that proposition would, a mill levy would generate, approximately $5 million a year for that 4-year term. So we're looking at $18 to $20 million that could be generated for renovations over that time frame. Again, possibility if you wanted to receive some of those monies up front, you could look at utilizing the building authority to finance some of that revenue as it comes in. But
it was used back in 1998. We had an election then, and was used to do the campus renovations at that particular time. Very effective way of doing it. Looking at a possible finance plan, just throwing this out as something that could be looked at for the University Center Flex Tech projects, assuming a total cost of $36 million. We could be looking at a possible state appropriation for 50% of the University Center for $13 million. General obligation bonds to finance 50% of the University Center and the Flex Tech building for $18 million. Private fundraising for 50% of the Flex Tech building or $5 million, providing total sources of funding of $36 million. Cost to the taxpayer on that, for that $18 million general obligation bond issue, would be about 1.65 mils. It could be repaid over 11 years. Cost to a $200,000 home in the Cheyenne area would be about $32 a year. Very reasonable, very inexpensive due to the low interest rates that prevail right now. And we were using an estimated bond interest rate of 1.75%. So, and that's just one way that potentially could be financed. Looking at the Fine Arts Center project options, college could consider 18 to a $25 million general obligation ballot at a future date, also leveraging state appropriations and private fundraising. College could make a request to County Commission for 0.25% to 1% on a future specific purpose sales and use tax ballot. Probably take some lobbying. Again, 1% raises $1.3 million a month. Number 3, Fine Arts Center college may qualify for funding from a 4-year $5 million initiative ballot by the college. And that brings in, as Todd just mentioned, $5 million a year over 4 years or $20 million before it would need to be renewed. So again, a sample funding plan, potentially for the Fine Arts Center could include a general obligation bond for $18 million, state funding for $18 million, private fundraising for $4 million, coming up with $40 million total. Cost to taxpayers, again, very low, 1.65 mils for 11 years. Residence hall and non-traditional housing finance plan. What we would suggest there is, first thing off, we'd suggest is doing a market study to really assess the need for additional residence halls through a professional market study to show how quickly, what the market is and how quickly you could lease it up. And then probably we want to take a look at financing the residence halls in phases over 3 to 5 years. Do one, get it constructed, lease it up, make sure there's still demand for the second residence hall, and go ahead and get that built, and then continue on with the non-traditional housing. So we haven't assumed any state appropriations. Rents and other revenues can be used by the college to make lease payments to the building authority on the bonds. Again, it just doesn't have to be paid back from rents on the residence halls. You can use other revenues. Bond rating would probably still be in the high A category. You'd be looking at, in today's market, 4% financing for 25 years. And you could sell the bonds, the first series, in 2015. As part of that, or maybe separate from that, you could pursue funding from a design build finance organization for one or more of the new residence halls through and perhaps getting all the funding from a private developer. So how much would that cost? I mean, given the estimates we got from architects, the first building might cost, given the square footage, about $13 million. That's it financed with bonds over 25 years. At 4%, you'd be looking at $825,000 a year in debt service. And you'd probably want to be able to show at least $1.1 million a year being available to cover that $825,000 to provide adequate coverage on the bonds. No impact on the bonding capacity of the college. And tax-exempt financing can be less than 4% if the term is less. Building authority, of course, can finance other projects and equipment at option to college at any time. Future on-campus renovations, similar to what you did in '98. Down the road, you can look at financing renovations to the campus here with general obligation bonds, state appropriations, private fundraising, Laramie County Community College Building for lease revenue bonds, 5 mil funding, 1% SPET revenue, and private design build finance money for essential facilities that generate cash flow. And we think, obviously, since it worked before, that a mill election down the road might be a good option to fund repairs and renovations to this campus, as was done successfully in 1998. And just as a sample, and you can have an election in November of 2018, assuming state funding approval in April of 19. The building authority could issue lease revenue bonds up front for $18 million in 2019. Project construction begins fall of 19, and mill levy funds up to $5 million a year can then be used to repay the bonds over the 4-year mill term, and no impact on your bonding capacity. And then, I guess, kind of an overview here on the bond market rates. As of August 10th, 2012, we still enjoy, for AA rated bonds, the lowest interest rates we've seen in 40 years. But everybody's very credit conscious. So if you take a look at the 5-year line, bonds maturing in 2017, if it's AA rated, you can get a 0.82% interest rate on those particular bonds. 1.25% if they're A rated, BBB rated 2.34%. And you go out to 25 years, in 2037, the difference between AA rated bonds and BBB rated bonds are 1.5% or more. So again, the market's very credit conscious. Always better if you're going to do debt at fixed rates to try to get the best possible bond rating that you can. So pretty quick there, Mr. Chairman, but hopefully I covered most of the points within the budget.
You gave us a lot. Any questions of Dan? And like I said, Dan, thank you for doing this, and then we'll have to talk about our agenda, but as we get our plan a little bit solidified, and hopefully we'll do that very quickly, go ahead, Kevin.
One question.
Yes, sir.
You pointed out that we've got the lowest borrowing cost in a long time. How long
40
is
years.
that- Yeah, how long is that likely to remain?
Oh, that's
Will it change rapidly?
That's a very good question. I mean, I've had a lot of people ask me that lately. In the last, was it Todd, really the last
2 weeks.
2 weeks, we've seen interest rates go up 0.25%. Rates are higher right now than they have been since May. So I don't know. I mean, we've had several bounces here. A lot of it depends upon what happens here in November and what Congress does and what the economy does. But most of the, we go to a lot of large meetings and we get a lot of economist reports, and to the T, everybody's predicting higher interest rates. But they just really haven't happened yet. They were all predicting that this will happen in the next year or 2 years. And Unfortunately, my experience, I've been in the business a long time now, is that when interest rates go down, they usually ratchet down pretty slowly. But when people decide, or the market, excuse me, not people, the market decides to go up, usually interest rates go up pretty quickly when they do go up. You know, it seems like it happens overnight. All of a sudden, they're real high again. So, but right now, it's an excellent environment to issue bonds and fixed rate debt. I've never seen anything like it. I'm talking to clients about selling general obligation bonds at 1%, 1.5%. I mean, very strong markets.
So would it be your advice that in the short term for projects, we look at financing by selling bonds, and in the longer term, we look at things like mill levies and so forth?
Oh, I think a bond issue, the college, is debt-free, has been for quite a while. You haven't had a mill levy in effect for quite a while. It certainly is a very attractive option, especially for classroom-type facilities. And and the cost is very low to the taxpayer. I mean, this college provides the service to the whole community, to the county. They've always been pretty receptive of general obligation bond issues that you presented in the past, and we just have a lot of work to do. I mean, in a campaign, as far as showing the need. But I agree with you. I mean, if you're looking at wanting to go fixed rate debt and go out, beyond 4 years, maybe over 10 years, a bond issue right now is a good idea. Where a mill levy is only a 4-year thing, and you don't really need to do bonds. Even if interest rates go up, you do a mill levy election, you can fund your projects over 4 years out of cash flow. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you very much for that. Like I said, we'll have you back in and grill you. Any other? Any other questions, Dan or Todd? Okay, to the end here. Just a few additional items of information. We've got a contracting procurement report that's out there. Historically, just a motion, please. I will open it up one last time for any public comment from the audience. If none, any other items from the board? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion that we move into executive session for personnel matters.
Okay.
Second.
Any second? Any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Okay, we will adjourn for 5 minutes and get back. Thank you. Good job, man. Thank you.
Oh, we got a minute. Okay. We're adjourning, we gotta get out of here, they're going in second.